Larry said I was supposed to talk for 5 hours. I can cut it in half. And how about I just keep it? Everybody was like, okay. Thank you, Larry, for those kind words. Good afternoon. Come on, y'all. Good afternoon. You've had lunch. You're feeling a little relaxed. I get it. But you're here in the state capitol. It's a pleasure to welcome you to your state capitol. I love that today's conversation is centered on the voices of young people around safer internet. And so for all of you young people who are here, you could have been anywhere. Let's give a big round of applause to all these young leaders. I would like to have your homework on my desk by the end of the day. Just kidding, no homework. But really, we do need to hear from you about what do we do to make the internet safer and how to maximize this resource. And I just say that because some of us like me have been around since the earth cooled. And I was around the internet around its foundings. I can remember when some vice president of this country, former vice president, said that he had created the internet. I think that was in 1999. I think about the internet many times in relation to what students have access to. Someone came in my office the other day, and there's some old pieces of equipment that just sit on the desk just for conversation, like a typewriter, right? Whoever used that. I went to college. I went to a computer center to borrow the computer for an hour to write a paper. I actually turned in papers written by hand. Can you believe that? Especially with my terrible handwriting, right? Things have changed in a remarkable way that we have now internet that, wasn't just created by the former vice president, but is super fast, lightning fast, and provides a great tool. But every tool has a flip side. And if we don't have good digital literacy and programs, these tools can be harmful, right? People talk about the Super Bowl. What they don't talk about at the Super Bowl is that for years, the Super Bowl meant an event where there were some of the highest levels of human trafficking taking place, right? And so as you all think about how to make the internet safe, how do we keep young people safe? How do we keep families safe? How do we make it more than just fakes? How do we make it more than scams? How do we make it more than breaches? How do we make it a tool that can be useful? And so I'm very interested in the perspective that our young leaders have to share. I want you to know three things. One, the U.S. Department of Education is not going to go away. You might have heard rumors that they're going to try and get rid of it. We are not going to let that happen on our watch because education is the cornerstone of our democracy. I can't imagine that anyone, including a president, would go after education. We're not going to let that happen. I'll tell you stories. Education saved my life. I wouldn't be here but for the fact to get the chance to get an education. The second thing I want you to know is that we are not going to allow Americans and Californians to just be torn apart over all kinds of issues, even like immigration. And this year, I wrote a bill called SB 48 that says that the immigration agency, ICE, has no place on a school campus. Stay off of our campuses. Let's keep our families together. Immigrant communities contribute so much to the state and to this country. And, let's create a fair path to citizenship and keep ICE off our campuses because the disruption harms students. And it actually costs our schools money. Many schools have already seen a dip in attendance because of immigration threats. And as you may know, California is one of only 5 or 6 states that still gets attendance based on average daily attendance. When a student shows up, there's a certain amount of money. When a student doesn't show up, we lose a certain amount of money. And so the threat to our schools from immigration raids could be as high as $100 million in revenue that our schools need and that they're struggling. They don't have revenue, and so we need them to have revenue. The third thing is that we will never stand for abuses of our kids. We're not going to let anybody threaten our LGBTQ plus kids, Black kids, immigrant kids. In California, we don't ban books, and we believe in accepting the beautiful diversity that exists in our state. And so I realize I'm off script and off message, but to me, it is all tied together. And again, education's a lifesaver. My grandparents, I'm the descendant of slaves. I'm the descendant of immigrants from places like San Andres, Colombia, Jamaica, Panama, where my mom was born. My grandparents met in Panama, and all of their kids were born there. In Detroit, Michigan, by way of Mississippi. My dad, there's always somebody from Detroit, Mississippi. My dad was raised in Detroit. He went straight into the U.S. Army during Vietnam. He didn't return. I found my father on the internet when I was 40 years old. That was our first conversation on the internet. I found my father that way. My mom was raising 4 kids by herself. I was born in Monterey, lived in San Jose. My mom was a teacher. She emigrated here to become a teacher in San Jose, but she was really sick. When my dad was off fighting in Vietnam, my mom got sick. She had cancer. I was 6 years old. She passed away. Her 4 kids all got split up. We literally lived in a valley. Before there was any Silicon Valley, we lived in a real valley in San Jose, and we got split up. I didn't see my older brother and sister for almost 10 years. My 5-year-old brother and I got sent to live in Philadelphia, where we got raised by my cousin, who was also an immigrant from Panama, who didn't have a formal education, but she believed in education. She said, stay in school. It will make your life better. She was absolutely right. All my teachers and school staff delivered a message that education will save your life, will change your life, no matter how your life starts. And I want to share that with you all. Whatever you decide to do in your life, whether it's in technology or not, education will carry you wherever you want to go. And the fact that you stepped up today to be a leader is so powerful and so important. I'm so grateful that you've chosen to be in your state capital to make change. And I grew up in a household where we didn't have food half the time. I was on the free lunch program. We received food stamps, which would be like today's EBT card, where you get free coupons to buy the food. And we had donations of government cheese, which is like a box of cheese in a block wrapped in this super thick plastic. You had to fight to get into it. If you got into that box, it might be the best grilled cheese or quesadilla you ever had, but you had to fight to get into it. And the slice of cheese on my sandwich was like this thick, right? It was hard then, but looking back now, those programs helped my family to overcome poverty. Getting an education was the thing that was the greatest gift in terms of helping us to overcome poverty. It changed my life. I became a social worker. I worked with foster youth and kids in the juvenile justice system. I got elected as a city council member, school board member, state legislator, and twice as a state superintendent of schools. And so education will change your life, and having access to digital education can change lives. And so as you're talking about how we get better cybersecurity, as you're talking about how we have ways to, prevent fakes and breaches, I'd like you to also think about how we really make sure that we have technology in the hands of young people from all backgrounds. It was really shocking to learn during the pandemic that we had 1 million students who did not have access to a computer or access to high-speed internet. In some cases, no internet. And so one of the first hearings that I called during the pandemic was to demand that the CEOs of all the internet service providers show up to a hearing here in Sacramento, and that they talk about their plan to give kids internet who didn't have it, and to give it for free. They all went running for the hills. All their lobbyists called me. They didn't want to talk to me. They thought I was threatening them, and I wasn't trying to threaten them. I was just saying we cannot be California and we have kids who don't have access to the internet. And so during the pandemic, it's sad, but it took the pandemic for us to learn about these discrepancies and for us to be able to get money to give students access to computers and to the internet. We sponsored legislation with anybody from Long Beach here. Senator Lena Gonzalez was the author of that legislation. It generated $6 billion so that we could create broadband all across the state. Many of you know our rural communities go without access. That's being changed as a result of those resources. We're able to get donated laptops for our students. But to me, in a state that has Silicon Valley and technology in LA and other places, we should not have to depend on donated computers and hotspots. We cannot hotspot our way into, I want California to be on top in terms of our ability to produce those who will work in technology. You want to work as a computer scientist? I want us to help you. Last year, we sponsored a bill, a computer science for all bill. We think that all students should know coding, even if you're not going to work in that sector. People say, why do you sponsor a bill about coding? I said, because if you look at what AI is doing now, when AI can be used to teach teachers how to teach computer science, that's a great tool, and we must harness the power of AI. I'm one of those people who doesn't see AI as just getting rid of a teacher's job. A computer will never be able to teach or support a student in the way that the real thing can. And I just think that's a great place to put your hands together. But I think we have to harness the technology to use it. There are districts that are using AI right now to evaluate students' knowledge in reading or math, and to come up with tips and tools to help that student to improve their proficiency. That's an aid that we can use, and it doesn't have to replace a teacher or classified staff or a one-on-one aid. We need all those great people working in our schools. And so as you think about your advocacy, I'd like you to think about what else can we do to close the digital divide. There never should have been a digital divide anywhere in this country. But unlike Europe and other places where they make the internet available, in this country, it's treated like any other commodity. And there's almost no regulation really about how technology and the access to internet works. And I think that has to change. You know, we're taking steps in California, and some of you students may find this unsettling or controversial, but I was proud to support the bill that says we should limit cell phones in school times. Because like the internet, sometimes cell phone at school gets used to bully other kids. You know, coming out of the pandemic, we've seen, as you all know better than me, think about your friends. We've seen the highest rates of depression, anxiety, and suicidality. And it is proven that there are algorithms that are there to only drag us deeper and deeper and deeper into use. And we have to offset that. And I think that those who work in social media and technology have a role to help us balance that, to help us get access to mental health resources to help our kids. If you heard nothing else that I said today, remember these three numbers, 988. You can text or call or chat on 988, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if you want to talk to a counselor who can help you. And we are in the process of trying to recruit 10,000 more counselors to work in our schools. We developed a scholarship that we will give to anyone who wants to become a mental health clinician or a teacher in our schools. When we developed the scholarship, it was $20,000 per participant. If you know somebody who wants to do it, just give me a call. 1-800, where you at? And I'll make sure we help you get connected to that money, because we need to have these resources. Our job, I believe, our job in schools is to make sure that we provide academic rigor to prepare our students for a great future, to provide the mental health supports that they need to be supported no matter what is happening, and to get on pathways to careers that you can engage in to help make a difference in your community so you can make a difference for your family. This is a state where great things exist, but yet we have 240,000 homeless students in the state. 10,000 of those students are completely unaccompanied. I can't get my mind around that. And so we've got legislation this year that says we're going to provide housing to them and wraparound supports. We have legislation that says we're going to build 2 million housing units on school campuses, because schools have 75,000 acres of land that's ready for development. We're going to make sure that students learn to read by 3rd grade, because when you learn to read by 3rd grade, you're less likely to drop out. And if you drop out, you're more likely to end up in the criminal justice system. So simply by educating our kids, you can clap for that, just by educating our kids, we can educate and not incarcerate kids in the great state of California. And so there's so many things that lie ahead for us to address. We have challenges and opportunities, but the internet is clearly a tool that can help us to work through that. And thank you for making the internet safer today and every day, and for continuing to give back. As you get your education, giving your input, guiding us and advising us on how we can have safer internet, more useful internet, and how we can be more useful to the 40 million people in the great state of California. Thank you for having me here today. I hope we have wonderful conversations.